How to make a traditional honey cake? How hard could that be? If these are the sort of questions that keep you up all night, you have come to the right place. I will show you all the steps and nuances. Also, I'll tell you what others don't. Your safety and health might depend on it. Here is what you need. For the cake layers, you need 2 eggs, 2 ounces of butter, 85% fat, 2 tablespoons of liquid honey, 1 cup of sugar, 4 cups of flour, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. For the custard cream, 2 cups of whole milk, 2 eggs, half a cup of flour, half a cup of sugar, 3.5 ounces of butter, again 85% fat, and a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. We will also need parchment papers for baking. Salmonella warning. USDA, the American Department of Agriculture, found that 1 in 20,000 eggs might contain salmonella, regardless of whether they are organic or conventional. And that means temperature treatment. The cake layers are baked at 355 degrees. The custard cream would have to be heated to 160 degrees, that'd be about 71 degrees Celsius. This is the temperature necessary to kill salmonella. Let's begin. I will start by gently melting the butter. We will melt the entire amount necessary for both the cake layers and the custard cream in one go. Then, when it is liquid, we can measure it out in ounces. Put on a tea kettle and boil some water. Grab your butter, make sure it is 85% fat, and measure out 5.5 ounces. Place them into a small dish that can be heat-treated, like this glass coffee mug, for example. Take a pot and place bain-marie, or double boiler, if you prefer a more basic term, into the pot. Put the pot on a medium-low heat and pour some water into it, so that the bain-marie is submerged by about 1.5 inches. Now place the container with butter into it. This will gently melt the butter, but it will not burn or cook it. Add a little more hot water if needed. Mix sugar, eggs, and 2 ounces of melted butter. Remove the bain-marie contraption from the burner and place the saucepan with the mixture on it. Meanwhile, place the measured out honey into the bain-marie. We will need that honey to be runny when the time comes to pour it in. Whisk the mixture really well. When the eggs are whipped well, pour in the liquid honey. Runny honey mixes in effortlessly. A cold viscous honey could give you a hard time, and the crystallized one would be even harder to mix. Now add a 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Continue to whisk. I wish my machine would go even slower, but alas, this is the slowest speed it goes with. When the mixture is homogeneous, pour it into a large bowl where we'll mix the dough. Add the flour, a tablespoon or 2 at a time, as the mixing machine does the job for you. Well, at least at this stage. Honey cake has a rich history that spans across multiple cultures and centuries, showcasing its global appeal due to the natural sweetness of honey. One of the earliest known recipes for honey cake comes from ancient Egypt. Honey was used extensively in their cuisine, including in breads and cakes due to its availability and preservative qualities. In ancient Greece, honey was used in baking, and this tradition continued into the Roman period. The Greeks had a dessert called melita unta, a honey cake often served during the festivals as offerings to the gods. Romans also enjoyed similar honey-sweetened pastries. And why wouldn't they? Honey was the sweetest thing around. The sugar was not available yet. The dough is getting thicker now. The thin whisking tool will no longer suffice. Let's switch the attachment to something more heavy-duty and continue. During the Middle Ages in Europe, honey was the primary sweetener before sugar became available. Honey cakes were common, especially during the religious festivities. In England, honey was used in what might be considered an early form of gingerbread, which often included honey, spices, and breadcrumbs. The dough is getting too thick for my machine now. Time to employ manual labor. Except I don't know anyone named Manuel, so I'll have to do it myself. Throw a bit of flour on the counter and knead the dough on it. Roll it into sausage, like this. Now cut it into halves. Halves into quarters, and quarters into eighths. Roll them up into the balls like this. Place the balls on a plate, cover them in the plastic, and put them in the fridge. Let's tidy up our workspace at this point and mentally fortify ourselves for the next step, the making of the custard cream. As we have discussed, there are many variations of this cake. Some of them are done with sour cream-based ganache, but I personally prefer this, a more sophisticated custard cream version. Set up your work area and ingredients for this part. You will not have much time to diddle once you start making your custard. The sour cream-based ganache calls for the powdered sugar. I do not have that, and I do not need it because we are going to cook the custard. The sugar will melt during the cooking process anyway. But if you're doing the sour cream version, you would want it fine, else these coarse grains will stick out of your cream like a sore thumb, and that will make your cake much less appealing. If that is your lot, you can make your own powdered sugar by running it in an old coffee grinder. Mix the sugar and the flour in a saucepan, add the eggs and a quarter teaspoon of vanilla extract. Whisk it really well with the machine. Put the saucepan on a medium heat and continue to whisk. Add the butter and the milk, a little bit at a time, and watch your temperature. You have to get this mixture to 160 degrees or 71 Celsius to kill the salmonella. If you run it on a low heat, it will not get hot enough and salmonella will survive. If you overheat it, you are risking the chance of your eggs coagulating and your cream will be ruined. This modern form of honey cake, known as Medovik, became popular in Russia in 19th century. It is said that this cake was first made in the 1820s by a chef to impress Empress Yelizaveta Alexeyevna. Similar cakes, such as medovnik, can be found in Poland, Ukraine and other Eastern European countries, where honey has been a staple for centuries due to the region's beekeeping traditions. As I have mentioned before, there is a simplified version of Medovik. It is called Medovik Smetannik. Instead of custard, those cakes use sour cream and butter whipped with fine sugar and some spices. That version of ganache does not contain any eggs, and therefore might be considered a safer alternative. Watch for the clumps at the bottom of the saucepan. If they form, you have to lift them and blend them. As you add the room temperature milk, crank up the heat slightly, but don't boil it though. You will be getting dangerously close to the boiling point. See all that steam coming off the pot? We are sterilizing our custard. The salmonella should be dead by now. If you skipped through the video and did not pay attention to this part, made a cake and then you and all of your guests got sick, the imperfection is yours. Don't tell me I didn't warn you or didn't show you how to make it safe. Oh damn, bad news. The camera is dead. I have to use a backup one. It's not as good, but I have no choice. The good news is, the custard is almost done. Okay, this camera goes on the charger. Something went wrong with the power cable during filming, but we shall overcome. Let's preheat the oven to 360 or 355 degrees and prepare our next workspace for rolling the dough. I will use these sheets of parchment paper to roll the layers on it. The problem is they slide all over my granite counter. Well, I'll use this all-purpose masking tape to keep the paper from sliding as I roll the dough. Whoops, almost forgot to cover the custard with the food plastic, like this. The plastic must touch the custard. This is done to prevent the crust forming as it cools down. If you neglect to do it, the crust will form and the crust will be harder than the rest of the custard. If you then break the crust and try to mix it in, you will end up with a bunch of clumps and will have to re-whisk the whole thing again. Now let's try to roll the smallest ball of dough and see what we are up against. The last time I did this Unreal tournament was the game of the year. Twin Towers were still standing, Hollywood was capable of producing moderately engaging entertainment, and the end of the world was scheduled for Y2K. Well, bummer. This one is a no-go. But I will show you how to fix this later. Also, an 8-inch pie is too ambitious. Let's dial it back to a 6-inch one. Hey, an unexpected bonus. This size fits perfectly onto my plate, so no harm no foul. Oil your hands and the rolling thing. This way the dough will not stick. Roll the dough into a very thin pancake and check that your cutting template fits into the area. Transfer the layer on a baking pan, like this, and stick it into the oven for about 8 minutes. Definitely no more than 10. You have to watch them, they bake really fast. While one is baking, let's roll the next one. We got our first layer baked. Place the template on top and cut out the circle. Keep the bits you cut, we'll pulverize them and use them to dress the cake later. See? Perfect fit. So perfect in fact that I forgot to put the 2 sheets of paper under it. That would have helped me with the cake dressing procedure at the final step, but oh well, I'll manage anyhow. Smear the custard on top of the layer and repeat this operation 7 more times. Honey has been integral in Middle Eastern desserts for millennia. Cakes like basbousa and revani, which incorporate honey and semolina, reflect long tradition in using honey in baking, although these are more akin to semolina cakes rather than the layered cakes found in Eastern Europe. In Jewish cuisine, honey cake or lekach is a traditional dessert for Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and it symbolizes the sweet year ahead. This tradition dates back to at least Middle Ages. Today, honey cake recipes have evolved but maintain the core elements of honey, flour and eggs, and sometimes spices like cinnamon or ginger, which, by the way, you can add in here as well. They vary widely from region to region, with some variations including nuts or different types of cream. Let's pulverize the baked scraps. Normally I would do that in my grinding machine, but since those are not very common in modern households, I will show you what to do if you do not have one. Here, stick them in a blender and reduce them to a coarse powder. And then you can refine them even further in an old coffee grinder. The final step is to dress the top and the sides of the cake with the custard and breadcrumbs. Once you dress the cake, put it in the fridge overnight. It has to soak up the custard into the layers. And it's tea time, with a traditional Eastern European homemade honey cake, all from scratch. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye for now.